Welcome to our video series on endangered wildlife conservation. My name is Lane Kirkpatrick. I am a long-term wildlife conservation enthusiast and a career environmentalist. My background includes hosting a local PBS TV program on environmental awareness, and I am very familiar with zoo animals, exhibits, and related conservation programs. So why should we be concerned about Mother Nature and its wildlife inhabitants? Well, we've lost about half of our native wildlife on Earth since the beginning of the century. Not only that, but it is predicted and estimated that we could lose 50% more of what we have left by the end of this century. So that's a major reason for concern. An endangered animal is considered one that has risk of extinction throughout its normal native range. So what we're talking about is their home, where they eat, where they live, where they mate and raise their young. That habitat doesn't really exist and has serious risk of extinction. Why have we had all these dramatic wildlife losses? Well, the major reason has been habitat loss. The loss of their homes, of their ranges, of where they exist. Certainly, there have been many other reasons, including illegal pet trade, invasive species, pollution, exploitation of our land and resources. And over the next 50 years, we expect there's going to be a very dramatic impact upon our wildlife from climate change. So the International Union for the Conservation of Nature tracks the future of our biodiversity and of our animals. And they have a red list of tracking threatened species. And there's 7 categories that they use to track our threatened animals, from least concern all the way through to fully extinct, like the passenger pigeon that no longer exists on Earth. So if we go through these 7 categories, least concern to near threatened, to vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, just like the orangutan was put into that category this last year, extinct in the wild, which means there might be a few in captivity that can be used for recovery programs, and again, all the way to fully extinct. So with that introduction in mind, welcome to our series. Our story today is about the Mexican gray wolf, a species once on the very brink of complete extinction, and the story of the recovery and the introduction program that followed. So if we take a look at where these guys were and where the recovery program was really focused, originally before man really inhabited this area, there were about 4,000 Mexican gray wolves in this light green shaded area. And as you can see, it covers Texas, New Mexico, pretty much all of New Mexico, and a good part of Arizona, as well as you can see, well down into Mexico. So originally there were 3 subspecies of the Mexican gray wolf, and 2 of them are completely extinct. But one of them did survive, but only by the virtue that there were down to 13 Mexican gray wolves in captivity. The only wolves of this kind that were left that really became, I would call it, the seed and the basis for breeding more of these wolves and a basis for the reintroduction of these wolves into an area that we're going to be talking about, which is kind of the reddish dot, which is where the wolves are now in New Mexico and Arizona. Pretty much the Gila mountain range and the White Mountains of Arizona. So with only 13 of these left, there is what we call the Mexican Gray Wolf Recovery and Reintroduction Program. And it's actually coordinated through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and through the American Zoological Association. and they have their own wolf recovery program. The reason the zoo's involvement is so important is because this original 13 wolves, we needed to breed more of them, and the zoos are a very important place where they're raised and where the pups are raised, as we're going to see here. Probably one of the most important objectives in the reintroduction program is keeping the genetic pool as strong as possible. And when one starts with only 13 remaining wolves, that's extremely important to keep it as strong as possible throughout this whole program. Now, the Albuquerque Zoo has been involved up until 1995 in the first phase of their involvement, and actually having 69 pups that were actually not only grown in the zoo, but then supplied to some other zoos for their breeding programs, but also introduced back into the wild. So that went kind of in limbo for a while, but I'm very happy to say that the Albuquerque Zoo is back in the business of raising more wolf pups. So at the zoo today, we have a female and male wolf, Ryder and Kayla. And together this last spring, they had 7 pups, of which 5 survived, and we have 3 females and 2 males. And so here's a picture of them kind of frolicking at the zoo. And so this is all kind of nice, and we hope to be involved in a lot more of these breeding of wolves here in the future. So how are they reintroduced? In the past, and with some of these guys, down at the Sylvietta Wildlife Refuge around Socorro, there's a large area. It's the area like where the Trinity bomb exploded, and there's some hills behind that, which are very secluded, very quiet, and there's some very large areas, several acres each, where these puppies are reintroduced to the wild. And before they actually go out to the area where they will be reintroduced in the mountains, that's where they're acclimated. And I want to show you a picture here. This is just a picture of like the Gila Mountains to show you the kind of terrain and habitat that the wolves like. And it's very forested, and in terms of what the wolves eat, certainly they hunt in packs, and they will eat mainly deer and elk. And they are usually the ones in these herds that are either infirm or not too healthy. That really helps keep the deer and elk population strong. They found, for example, in Yellowstone National Park, where the elk were eating all of the riparian environments, the plants along the stream, and we were losing birds and small mammals, that when the wolves came back, a very healthy ecosystem resulted because of that. If you go up to Yellowstone now, you'll see that the environment up there is much stronger and in balance to the number of mammals there are with respect to the wolves keeping everything in balance. So another thing that is done to keep the gene pool strong is that when these puppies are very young, younger than this, just a few weeks after they're born, sometimes the wild wolf packs, they'll take the ones in the zoo and they put them into with the babies that are in the wild, and the mothers actually adopt them. And so sometimes they're exchanged that way, but it helps keep the gene pool quite strong. So how many wolves is really considered to be a healthy population in New Mexico and Arizona? The answer is about 300. So that in 1917, in the recovery area, we had 114 wolves. Last year, the number went up to 131, and this year they counted 163. Well, how do they know there's 163 wolves out there? All of these wolves are collared so that they can be tracked. And they basically do the tracking by low-flying helicopters. And so they have a pretty good idea as to not only how many there are, but with the collars, where they actually end up. Now last year it's really interesting. Even though most of these wolves are south of us in the mountains I mentioned, last year they saw one come up to the Route 66 casino, just west of Albuquerque, crossed the highway and went up towards the mountains, probably looking for a mate. So that's one way that the wolves actually propagate and reestablish some of their habitat, is to go out on their own and explore, and maybe in time set up new wolf packs in different areas. So it can really be said that we're very lucky that the Mexican wolf now again roams the forests of the Southwest like they never did before. And as you know, sometimes I like to end with a little humor. And so what did the wolf say when someone stepped on its foot?
What?
Oh! Until next time. We're going to talk about cats again today. I love cats. A lot of people love cats. And they've been on Earth for about 30 million years. And the domestic cat's been on Earth about 10,000 years. And it actually derived from a small African jungle cat that then blossomed out to all the varieties of domestic cats that we have today. So there's a lot of varieties of cats, 38 varieties. So we have Ocelot cats. Ocelot. That's the cat that we've chosen to really talk about today. And let's take a look here at the guy. They're about 35 pounds. They have very graceful bodies. They're about 4 feet long, and their colors sort of vary from pale to dark tawny hues. And as you notice, they have brown spots with black rings around them. Another distinguishing feature is the black lines that go from its eyes up over the top of the head. And they really are considered to be probably the most beautiful of our American wildcats. So let's take a look at the range. And this is kind of the traditional range over thousands of years. And it's not only South America, Central America, but as you can see, a bit up into Texas, right there, and into Arizona, right there. And they're pretty common. They're not really threatened once you get out of the United States. But this cat was really at the brink of extinction in the United States. And we have plans now to protect them and to actually grow the population a little bit. There's only about 100 of these guys left in the United States right now. And those are pretty much in southern Texas, especially along the border of Mexico, where you've got a lot of dense vegetation along the Rio Grande River, and up into Arizona, sort of following some of the woodlands up into about the middle part of that state. So again, let's talk about their habitat. They really do like bushy forests. They also like semi-arid deserts, and as you head south from the United States, tropical forest, and even the mountain slopes of the Andes. And then even further down into the pampas of Argentina and Chile, where the grass is pretty high. So these guys, though, are nocturnal. That's one reason you don't see them too often. Not only are they living in pretty dense vegetated areas, but they pretty much hunt at night. And during the day, they tend to rest or sleep, typically hung over maybe a branch up in a tree or in a sheltered den, depending on their mood and really what they feel like. So what do they eat? Well, they eat a lot of different stuff. They're pretty diverse in their diets. Rabbits, birds, fish, These guys are actually pretty good swimmers. I think we said that jaguar is pretty good swimmer too. A lot of cats don't like to swim, but these guys are really good swimmers. Rodents. So they're really good at climbing, jumping, and swimming. So like a lot of other cats, these cats tend to be quite solitary. But on the other hand, they do maintain social contacts with other ocelots in the area. And when they get together with other cats, there's a lot of meows. When they mate, there's a lot of jowls, more of that sound. But they are social when they really kind of want to be. So let's talk a little bit about their gestation and their propagation. They have about 70 days before they have their litters. And let's take a look over here at this cute little guy at the end. I think, baby cats, kittens, some of the most adorable things. And these ocelots have 1 to 4 kittens at a time. Their mothers teach them how to hunt, and they generally are with their mothers for about a year before they go off by themselves. And so do you know what you call a baby ocelot?
What's that?
An ocelot.
Aww.
Oh. So talking a little bit again about the ocelots in the United States. The reason for their decline was not only habitat loss and hunting, but there was also roadkill. And if we take a look at what the plan is to help grow the population again in the United States, part of it is they're building corridors under some of the highways, especially down in Texas where these things are, so that they don't have to come up in the busy roads with the cars. But the other aspect of recovery is that some of the ocelots live in fragmented, separate habitats. So they're not interbreeding between different groups of ocelots. And it's important that they do for the genetic strength of the ocelots. So with that in mind, that's a strong basis for a lot of the recovery efforts being taken. So that's a little bit about ocelots, and we look forward to seeing you next time.